afternoon. Calling to order the House Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce. It is 2:00 p.m. We are in room 329. It is February 22nd, 2023. We'll be limiting testimony to 2 minutes. For those who are testifying via Zoom, please keep yourselves muted and your videos off until it is your turn to testify. If you do have technical issues, just contact our IT staff via chat and we'll get to you if we still have time for this agenda. First on the agenda, we have HB 834 HD1 relating to American Sign Language. First to testify on this measure in person, we have Ed Chevy from the Aloha State Association of the Deaf in support. Please go ahead.
Good morning. I wanted to express and just say a few things in terms of what communication is. Communication is power, and that is powerful. We're not communication impaired. We need 100% access, which ASL will provide for us. ASL is, in fact, a full language. It has contradictions, you know, it has its own things, but it's not an amalgamation of any other languages. It is in and of itself an own language. So, you know, you mean you have to separate being deaf from being the person, and language is what's important. People who are in the deaf community who use American Sign Language are good people. We are in the 21st century. We need to make changes. We're constantly faced with changes. And we need to be able to have language, and we also need to hope that the change in the 21st century is that ASL will be recognized as a language, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Fanny Ye in support.
Aloha. Thank you so much, representatives. My name is Fanny Ye. I was born deaf, and I was born in and grew up in Taiwan. I used Taiwanese Sign Language there, went to school and signed there. Then I moved to Brazil, and I used Libras, which is the Brazilian Sign Language. Came to the United States and learned American Sign Language. Then I went to France and learned French Sign Language. So, you know, now we see that language, each sign language is really natural and native to people, and especially we're seeing more exposure to different sign languages through TikTok, through Zoom, through all the technology that people have been using, that the world is accessible to everyone, and we're seeing that we need to have communication accessible. It supports us, it provides equal access and allows us to have access to education and to the political process and to life in general. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? I know Jan Fried is also here, but is signing for us also in support. Any other persons here to testify? Okay, seeing none members, there's a supportive testimony from the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission, Hawaii Disabilities Rights Center, Special Education Advisory Council, as well as several individuals. Members, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll be taking a short recess for decision making. Recess.
Reconvening the Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce for decision-making on the first bill, HB 834, House Draft 1, relating to American Sign Language. Members, Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as is. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Voting on HB 834 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Amato, excused. Representative Bellotti, excused. Representative Hashem,
Here. Aye.
thank you. Representative Hussey Burdick.
Aye.
Representative Gates, excused. Representative Lowen.
Aye.
Representative Onishi.
Aye.
Representative Tam.
Aye.
Representative Pierre, excused. Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Short recess.
Reconvening the House Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce, will be continuing with the agenda. Moving on to HB 102 relating to professional engineers. First to testify on this measure, we have Don Takeuchi Akuna from the Department of Planning and Permitting in support.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair Donna Puna, DPP. Yes, we're highly in support of this bill. We face many challenges as far as hiring and retaining our engineers who are plans examiners and are part of the permitting process. I'm sure you're well aware of our permitting backlog, but we need engineers to review permits, and we have a hard time hiring, retaining, and competing with private and federal agencies in the retention of these engineers. So this is an important bill that will help to level the playing field and allow for government plan review experience in lieu of the normal requirements. And so I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sheena Choi from the Board of Professional Engineers, Architects, Surveyors, and Landscape Architects in opposition on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Sheena Choi, Executive Officer of the Board of Professional Engineers, Architects, Surveyors, and Landscape Architects. The board would like to stand on its written testimony in opposition to this bill, and we are available for comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Are any other persons here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to the next bill, HB 639. 639 relating to insurance. First to testify on this measure, we have Mana Moriarty from DCCA in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Mana Moriarty with the Office of Consumer Protection. We oppose this bill. I'd just like to point out one particular provision, and that is the provision that deletes the requirement that a car-sharing platform obtain a written acknowledgement from the car-sharing driver that they have received information about the insurance policies that are in place. We think that is simply the wrong choice from a policy perspective, that full information and transparency is desirable in these kinds of situations. Not only does it assist the driver make an educated decision about their own coverage, but we think as a matter of policy, it's good for the consumer as well. These bills have a lot of other provisions that are objectionable in them. This bill in particular is going to reduce the level of coverage that shared cars are required to provide and that shared car platforms are required to ensure is available. And there will be other testifiers that can address that. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to testify, we have Gordon Ito from DCCA Insurance Division in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Gordon Ito testifying on behalf of DCCA. We are in opposition to the bill, and we have comments. The main comment or concern is the bill was passed last year. It just became effective January 1st. Request the bill or the law to, be in effect for a while to see the impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Allison Ueoka from the Hawaii Insurers Council in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Allison Ueoka for Hawaii Insurers Council. We oppose this bill based primarily on the comments of OCP and the Insurance Division. We mirrored those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Davin Aoyagi from Turo Inc. in support.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, other committee members. Thank you for taking the time and considering my testimony. We support this measure, which seeks to address the disparity in coverage requirements that currently exist between peer-to-peer car sharing and other similar analogous forms of industries. It's the case where I'm sure you're all familiar with what peer-to-peer car sharing is. It's when locals like you or me share their vehicle with someone that's looking for a vehicle on a platform, in this case, the platform being Turo. This risk profile is no different than rental car companies or personal vehicles. And yet, out of these sort of situations that I've addressed, there's one, in this case, peer-to-peer car sharing, that's set at 18.75 times the state minimums, or $750,000. There seems to be no policy basis for this, and we continue to question why it's set so high. In fact, we've shared 5 years of claims information with the Insurance Commission, and we believe that it demonstrates that there is no justifiable rationale for these higher limits. Again, we support the measure. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. We're available for any questions as they may arise.
Thank you. Next, we have Evan Owe from the Hawaii Association for Justice in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Evan Oye on behalf of the Hawaii Association for Justice. We stand in opposition to this measure. As mentioned previously by the previous testifiers, this measure does seek to reduce the minimums from $750,000 back down to about $20,000, which is the required minimums for automobile vehicles. This substantial reduction doesn't actually reflect the risk associated with peer-to-peer usage. Peer-to-peer car companies, they don't actually have to maintain their vehicles, and keep them in safe operating conditions, as well as, there's a substantial amount of risk in letting multiple drivers continue to utilize their vehicles. This $750,000 was implemented last year, and there's been no change in that risk since its implementation. So we respectfully oppose this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kiko McClellan from Get Around in support.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair. Thank you for your time this afternoon, honorable members of the committee. Get Around supports this measure. You've seen our written testimonies in previous hearings and of course, what was provided today. I wanted to call out a couple of things for you from some of the Get Around written testimony that was provided. There's a lot of talk about the coverage requirement. And we don't like to talk about other states, but because it was asked and not answered in previous hearings, we wanted to take an opportunity to explain just how much of an outlier 18X in the state minimums are. California currently requires 3 times their state minimums, 3 times. And there's a law that was introduced this year to reduce those minimums from 3X. Oregon and Colorado and Washington, Oregon and Colorado are both at 3X. Washington State reduced it from 3X to 2X, and other Western styled states like Arizona and New Mexico only require state minimums. And so if we're talking about transparency also, the industry as a whole has been working very hard to provide any data that is asked of us by regulators. I know that personally for Get Around, we offered to provide our insurance policies for inspection to the insurance commissioner last year, and they did take us up on that. And so we are a peer-to-peer car sharing app at Get Around that looks at community-based car sharing, and these costs make it extremely difficult for us to provide this mobility option for our communities. And that's why we're asking you to please advance this measure today. Mahalo.
Thank you. And next we have Soledad Roybal from Get Around in support on Zoom. Okay. Are there any persons here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, members, we also have supportive testimony from Adrene Moritas, individual. Members, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 640 relating to insurance. First to testify on this measure, we have Mana Moriarty from DCCA, Office of Consumer Protections, in opposition.
Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. Mana Moriarty, Office of Consumer Protection. We oppose this bill. Look, there is nothing good for consumers that would come out of this bill. The platforms might be making their policies available to the insurance commission at this point. The law requires them to make them available to the peer-to-peer car sharing drivers. They want to delete that ability in this bill. This is not just about 18X. This is about obtaining full disclosure for consumers. It's also about situations where there may be no other insurance available. And at page 8, lines 8 through 15, the platforms are proposing that they do not have any coverage obligation even when there's a lapsed policy. That is simply not acceptable. We oppose this bill. It does not provide any benefits for consumers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Gordon Ito, Insurance Commissioner from DCCA Insurance Division, in opposition.
Good afternoon again. Similar to House Bill 639, we oppose this bill and offer comments. So I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Allison Ueoka from the Hawaii Insurers Council, in opposition.
Good afternoon. Allison Ueoka for Hawaii Insurers Council. We stand on our testimony opposing this bill. This bill basically walks back the legislation that was just enacted, effective 1/1/2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have David Aoyagi from Turo Inc. In support.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, other committee members. We'll stand on our testimony in support of this measure. As we've already stated, we don't believe that there is a policy justification for why it is 18.75 times higher relative to rental car companies and the state minimums. I will also just say that we are subject to the same maintenance requirements under statute as rental car companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Evan Owe from the Hawaii Association for Justice, in opposition.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Evan Oye on behalf of the Hawaii Association for Justice. We stand on our written opposition again, and just echoing the same concerns with the substantial reduction in insurance minimums. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Matt Sujimura from the State Farm, in opposition, on Zoom. Not present. Moving on, we have Soledad Roybal, Get Around, in support, on Zoom. Okay. Are there any other members here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, we have written testimony in opposition from the National Association of Political Insurance Companies, and supportive testimony from Get Around and a single individual. Members, are there any other questions? Seeing none, moving on to HB 541 HD1. This is relating to vehicle safety. First to testify on this measure, we have Kenneth Hara from Department of we don't have anyone. Only written testimony. Is there any persons here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none. Members, we have written testimony in support from the Department of Transportation and an individual. Okay, moving on to the next measure, HB 1033. This is relating to the State Building Code Council. First to testify on this measure, we have Kenneth Hara, Major General from the Department of Defense, in support.
Aloha, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. Obviously, I am not Kenneth Hara. Thank you to the members of the committee for hearing. I am Adam Weintraub. I'm the Communication Director for the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. And General Hara and Administrator Barros had conflicting obligations, two different ones this afternoon, so I apologize and hope that my testimony will serve. We stand in support of this bill. This adds one member to the State Building Code Council, and Haima stands on our written testimony and can answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, we have written testimony with comments from the American Institute of Architects, Hawaii State Council. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 1046 HD1. This is relating to educational health services. First to testify on this measure, we have Keith Hayashi, Superintendent from the Department of Education, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Annie Kalama, Office of Student Support Services, Assistant Superintendent, offering testimony on behalf of Superintendent Keith Hayashi and Department of Education. We stand on our written testimony in support of this bill. We're here if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kenneth Fink from the Department of Health, in support.
Aloha, I'm Joan Takamori, Public Health Nursing Branch Chief. On behalf of Kenny Fink for the Department of Health, we stand on our written testimony and support, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Alani Kuoge from the Hawaii Medical Board with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Alani Kioki. I'll stand on my written testimony, providing comments with regard to healthcare professional, the definition of healthcare professional. We do ask for an amendment as outlined in my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Laura Reinhardt from the Hawaii State Center of Nursing, in support. Are they here? Okay. We'll be moving on then. Are there any persons here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, members, we have written testimony in support from the University of Hawaii, 3 individuals, and an individual in opposition. Members, do we have any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 419 HD1. This is relating to residential photovoltaic energy generating systems. Are there any persons here to testify on this measure? Okay. Seeing none, members, we have written testimony in support from the County of Kauai from Council Vice Chair Addison Guluson and 4 individuals also in support. Moving on to HB 192 HD1. This is relating to energy efficiency. First to testify on this measure, we have Director Kenneth Fink from the Department of Health, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Dr. Diana Felton, State Toxicologist, on behalf of Dr. Fink. Department of Health stands on our written testimony in support of this bill that will help eliminate mercury from the environment and improve energy efficiency. Available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Chief Energy Officer Mark Glick from the Hawaii State Energy Office, in support on Zoom. Not present. Moving on, we have Ramsey Mansour from the Hawaii County Department of Environmental Management, in support. Okay, sorry, they're not here. We have Tiffany Yajima from the Alliance for Automotive Innovation with comments. Okay, they're not here. Next, we have Jody Robinson, Blue Planet Foundation, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Jody Robinson on behalf of the Blue Planet Foundation. You have our testimony in support. By establishing a clean lighting standard in Hawaii, we would save millions in utility bills annually, estimates of $37 million each year from passing this bill, as well as significant savings of energy use, reducing carbon emissions, and our exposure to mercury. So for these reasons, we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Caroline Carl from the Hawaii Energy and Support on Zoom.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Caroline Carl with Hawaii Energy, offering our support for this bill and available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brian Fade from the Appliance Standards Awareness Project and Support.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony, and mainly I wanted to be available for any questions. We've been working on this policy with folks in Hawaii and other states as well. I'll just add, I saw the written comments from Automotive Innovation asking for an exemption for light bulbs used behind dashboards in older cars. And I'll just say my initial reaction is the light bulbs in question probably are not covered by the bill anyway, because the definitions are written pretty tightly. The bill only covers your standard office building or residential fluorescents. But that being said, the exemption language proposed is probably fine. We just wouldn't want to see a big loophole created, and it doesn't appear that this would. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, we have written testimony and support from Ulupono Initiative and 5 other individuals. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 12 HD1 relating to timesharing. First to testify on this measure, we have Timeshare Administrator Lori Beth Cantfort from the DCCA with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair Lori Beth Van Cantfort with the DCCA Timeshare Administrator. We stand on our written testimony offering comments and wanted to note that we have been working with the proponents of the bill to try and come up with agreed upon language, and we're still working with them. And I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Charles Pear from the American Resort Developmental Association Hawaii in support on Zoom. Not present. We'll be moving on to Justin Vermouth from the American Resort Development Association in support on Zoom.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Justin Vermouth on behalf of the American Resort Development Association. We provided written testimony and we stand on that testimony. I would just add and echo the comments from DCCA that we did receive one comment on the bill from them, and we made that change to the bill and provided that to them today. I understand it was probably too quick to get their approval prior to this hearing, but we have been working well together and we have addressed their concerns, we believe, and we're hopeful for this legislation to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Mike Yosu on behalf of Merit Vacations Worldwide. We're supporting this bill. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. The bill essentially would help to clarify what documents are required for timeshare registrations, and also to kind of verify that the onus for ensuring that zoning compliance outside of the state of Hawaii is on the developer to clarify that that it's in compliance with any zoning requirements. As Timeshare Administrator mentioned, we are still working on some language. We just hope the committee can move it along so we'll have a chance to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 85 HD1. This is relating to single-use plastics. First to testify on this measure, we have Dawn Chang from the Department of Land and Natural Resources in support. Okay, seeing that they're not here, we'll be moving on to Kenneth Fink from Department of Health with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Sayama, members of the committee. My name is Michael Burke. I'm here on behalf of Dr. Kenneth Fink with the Department of Health. We stand on the written testimony that we submitted on HB 85, and I'm available if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Oh, please go ahead.
Aloha nui kākou, Chair, Vice Chair, members. Ilihia Johnson for the Hawaii Tourism Authority, and if I might, Chair Nakashima, so good to see you back. Aloha to you. We stand on our written testimony in support of this measure. We also want to take this opportunity to recognize those members of the industry who have been making this transition away from small plastic bottles. We'll continue to support that effort in our visitor education efforts and stand by for any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you. Any other persons here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, members, we have written testimony in support from the Hawaii Lodging Tourism Association, opposition from the Plastic Industry Association, and supportive testimony from the Surfrider Foundation Hawaii Region, Maui Chamber of Commerce, Maui Hotel and Lodging Association, and 6 other individuals. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 695 HD1. This is relating to fences. First to testify on this measure, we have Cindy Williams-Lundy from Amarok in support.
Aloha, I'm Melissa Pavlicek. I'm here on behalf of Amarok, a company that makes battery-powered fences. We believe this bill is very important because the existing statute clearly allows such fences for agricultural purposes. Last session, I had the opportunity to work with many of you, including Vice Chair Sayama, on legislation to prevent catalytic converter theft. This is another tool that businesses can use to deter and prevent theft. This bill has been gone through a revision already and the result of some compromises and discussions with other stakeholders, so we just ask that you put a clean effective date on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 307 HD1 relating to agriculture park leases. First to testify on this measure, we have Sharon Hurd from the Hawaii Department of Agriculture in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. Morris Soth, Deputy for the Department. The Department will stand on its testimony offering comments and saying that we support the efforts to increase ag production, but we do have concerns regarding the policy positions that are being expressed by this bill, and would request that should this measure go forward, that the legislature include language to the effect of what the policy direction is going to be, balancing extended lease terms versus the access for new farmers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to testify, we have Kendall Matsuyoshi from the Local Food Coalition in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Kendall Matsuyoshi on behalf of the Local Food Coalition. Will stand on a written testimony in support of the measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, oh, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bill. We did submit written testimony. My apologies, I wasn't sure if we're going to make it back in time for this hearing, but we're here because this is a very important bill. We stand in strong support of this measure. This bill passed last year, passed the legislature. The governor unfortunately vetoed it. This is an attempt to help our farmers who have proven track records, whose leases are expiring, to continue to farm, to continue to produce the food, feed, fiber, fuel, and floriculture that we need here in Hawaii. We know some of the arguments, but BLNR is allowed, or DLNR is allowed to extend leases. Why isn't DOA? Why are farmers not good enough? Why are industrial leases allowed to be extended, but not the farmers? The bill does say that the department may extend. They don't have to extend the leases. So this is, we know that there's a need for new farmers, and that's why we encourage the legislature to continue to look for private lands and convert them into state ag park lands. But let's not kick our farmers out that are successful, that have transitioned and have succession plans and want to continue farming. We ask that you move this bill forward. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, members, we have written testimony in support from Land Use Research Foundation of Hawaii, Maui County Farm Bureau, Hawaii Farm Bureau, Hawaii Floricultures and Nursery Association, Paneva Foliage, HCIA, several individuals, and Kawasaki Nursery. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Chair.
Department of Ag.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Hello. The Office of Foreign Affairs did express some concerns regarding this measure. Basically, they were concerned that the land would not be available for Native Hawaiians. And I was just wondering if you knew what percentage of the current ag park lands were occupied by Native Hawaiians.
I would have to get those statistics. 'Cause as far as I'm aware, we don't track our tenancies by those criteria. But we could possibly. I'm not sure because we don't collect that information. So I'm not sure that we could give you that information.
Okay, then so if possible, you can communicate to the chair, and I will share it with the members.
Definitely.
The other thing was that does the department, or would the department consider a prioritization for Native Hawaiian applicants in the granting of the parcels available?
It's my understanding that we are open to any priorities that the legislature is interested in pursuing. We haven't had that in our practice. Now we don't have that kind of ranking of priorities of the types of lessees that we put on our lands. But preferences again are a policy issue that. Should that be expressed by the legislature, of course, we'd be, looking at implementing it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to HB 615 HD1 relating to restrictions on agriculture use and activities. First to testify on this measure, we have Sharon Hurd from the Hawaii Department of Agriculture in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. Morris Sata again, Deputy for the Department. The Department will stand on its testimony in support for this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have, no, that's it. Any other persons here to testify on this measure? Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. My name is Katia Balaciano, and I'm with I'm the Land Use Administrator with the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. We stand in support of the testimony that we thought we had submitted and are here and available to answer any questions. We support this change. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other persons? Okay, members, we also have written testimony in support from the Hawaii Farm Bureau and an individual in opposition. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 884 HD1. This is relating to traveling team physicians. First to testify on this measure, we have Esther Brown from the Regulatory Industries Compliance Office with comments. Okay, seeing that they're not here, we'll be moving on to the next testifier, Alani Kyoki, thank you, from the Hawaii Medical Board with comments.
Thank you for hearing this bill. Alani Kyoki, Executive Officer of the Hawaii Medical Board. The board does seek clarity regarding some of the terms used in the bill itself. They'd like to see clarity regarding what specific organizations are designated as national sport governing body and what facilities are designated as a national sport training center in the state. Further, the board does not feel that it's necessary to create an entirely new section, as there are exemptions or exceptions to the licensing law, specifically 453-2, which this language can be inserted into. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other persons here to testify on this measure? Okay. Seeing none, any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 217 HD1 relating to home renovations. First to testify on this measure, we have Sheena Choi from the Board of Professional Engineers, Architects, Surveyors, and Landscape Architects in opposition on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sheena Choi, Executive Officer of the Board of Professional Engineers, Architects, Surveyors, and Landscape Architects. The board would like to stand on its written testimony and is available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Rocky Mold from the Hawaii Solar Energy Association in support on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Rocky Mold with the Hawaii Solar Energy Association. We'll stand on our written testimony in strong support of this measure. But I'd like to add that we've been working with permitting authorities at the county level for a number of years, and we're starting to see some significant progress. Where these threshold levels are set right now in HRS, those are really low and could essentially undermine a lot of the efforts that we're doing to streamline permitting to the benefit of our economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Reed Mizue from the AIA Hawaii State Council with comments on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Reed Mizoi with the AIA Hawaii State Council. I'd like to stand on our written testimony providing comments. We'd like to make mention that our comments do align with the DCCA's ISLA board. And then we'd also like to, in our comments, we do provide some alternative language. So thank you very much for considering.
Thank you. Next, we have Nimur Tamimi from the American Council of Engineering Companies in opposition on Zoom.
I'm here, Vice Chair. So good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair. This is Sandy Wong on behalf of the American Council of Engineering Companies. We have submitted written testimony in opposition and we'll stand on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, we have written testimony in support from 350 Hawaii and an individual. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 1509 HD1. This is relating to common interest developments. First to testify on this measure, we have Jane Sugimura from the Hawaii Council for Association of Apartment Owners in support. Seeing that she's not here, we'll be moving on to the next testifier, R. Lori McGuire from CAI-LAC in opposition.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of CAI-LAC, and we are here to testify in strong opposition to House Bill 1509. We stand on our testimony. However, I am available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing
Yes,
none.
Chair.
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
My name is Phil Nerney. I submitted testimony in opposition. My perspective is in accord with that of CAI, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, we have written testimony in support from Palehua Townhouse Association, opposition from Honolulu Tower AOAO, written testimony with comments from Gordon Arakaki and 2 other individuals in opposition. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll be taking a short recess for decision making. Recess.
reconvening the hearing by the Committee on Commerce, Consumer Protection and Commerce, Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, 2 p.m. agenda, room 329 for decision making. We've already done decision making on 834, so we will move on to House Bill 102 related to professional engineers. Recommendations of the chair is to pass unamended. Members, any questions or comments? Not, Vice Chair, unamended.
Voting on HB 102, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Amato, excused. Representative Bellotti, excused. Representative Hashem.
Aye.
Representative Hussey Burdick.
Aye.
Representative Gates.
Aye.
Representative Lowen.
Aye.
Representative Onishi, excused. Representative Tam.
Aye.
Representative Pierre.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 639 relating to insurance. Chair's recommendation is that we pass this out with a HD1 and delete Section 2 from the bill. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Voting on HB 639, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Do any members vote no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 640, Chair's recommendation is to defer. Next, House Bill 541, House Draft 1 related to vehicle safety. Chair's recommendation is pass this unamended. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, unamended.
Voting on HB 541, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the excused absence of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Do any members vote no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 1033 related to the State Building Code Council. Chair's recommendation is to pass this with technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style, and also defect dated for June 30, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Voting on HB 1033, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, knowing the excused absence of Representative Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Do any members vote no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 1046, House Draft 1 related to education and health services. Chair's recommendation is that we reinsert on line 7, page 7, line 6, as provided in section 302A-853. This connects the current measure with the DOE language in its statute, and also technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Voting on HB 1046 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Any members voting with reservations? Voting no. Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 419, House Draft 1, related to residential photovoltaic energy generating systems. Chair's recommendation is to pass this as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, unamended.
Voting on HB 419 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the excused absence of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Do any members vote no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 192, House Draft 1, related to energy efficiency. We'd like to adopt the amendments proposed by San Hawaii on behalf of the Alliance for Automotive Innovation at the car manufacturers, creating exemption for previously manufactured automobiles regarding the use of small light bulbs behind the display screens in older cars. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Voting on HB 192 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting the excused absence of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi, any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. House Bill 12, House Draft 1, relate to timeshares. I know there are concerns about the bill. It is a work in progress. We will pass this on to see if they are able to come to resolution before the end of the session. So we will pass this as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as is.
Voting on HB 12 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the excused absence of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Do any members vote no? Any? Okay, reservations from Representative Purick. Okay, and any other members voting with reservations? Any other members voting no? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 85, House Draft 1, relate to single-use plastics. The Chair's recommendations we pass this as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair unamended.
Voting on HB 85 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the excused absences of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 695, House Draft 1, relate to fences. Chair's recommendation is that on page 2, lines 14 to 16, instead of the current edition of the edition of the International Electrical Technical Commission standards, we go with the most current edition of the International Electrical Technical Commission standards, 60335-2-76. Okay, that's it. Members, any questions or comments? If not, Vice Chair as amended.
Voting on HB 695 HD1, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Relating to the agricultural park leases, Chair's recommendation is that we pass this unamended, and I'd like to note that I would like to put some language into the committee report asking DOA to consider prioritizing some of the land for Native Hawaiian applicants. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Voting on HB 367 HD1, Chair's
I'm sorry, no amendment, yeah? Yeah, I'm
yes.
sorry.
Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the excused absences of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 615, House Draft 1, related to restrictions on agriculture uses and activities. Chair's recommendations pass this bill as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, unamended. Vice Chair.
Voting on HB 615 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the excused absences of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 884, House Draft 1, relating to traveling team physicians. Chair's recommendations to move this as is. Members, questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair unamended.
Voting on HB 884 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the excused absences of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 884 related to traveling team physicians. The recommendation is to pass this as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Sorry.
We did that already.
Yeah, this is HB 217.
Okay, I'm sorry. House Bill 217, House Draft 1 related to home renovations. Chair's recommendation is to pass this as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Voting on HB 217 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the excused absences of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, finally, House Bill 1509, House Draft 1, relating to common interest developments. Chair's recommendation is that we extend the task force for one additional year and ask that a interim report be filed at the end of 2024 to the legislature and a final report in 2025, and have the task force cease to exist after 2025. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as amended.
Voting on HB 1509 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Amato, Bellotti, and Onishi. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. We are adjourned.